Right. So welcome everybody. Thanks for spending your time with us today. I know it's late afternoon back in the UK, and wherever you're calling in from, early morning over here in SF. So I appreciate you all for coming. Just to give everybody a bit of insight, I think everyone knows what Startup Grind is, but just to give you an overview, Startup Grind is a global community of startups. We've been around for about 15, 16 years, and we help early stage founders. So anywhere from ideation through to Series A is kind of where we help out, because we know that's where the pain points are. You might have raised a little bit of money, you might have got a little bit of traction, but you're trying to get to that next level, right? That next stage. And we try and facilitate that through our chapters around the world. So we have 250 chapters around the world that's run by an individual chapter director. So that they're people that volunteer and they know the community inside out in their own cities. And they run events, we run educational programs, and we just try and help founders connect to the people that they need to, whether it's fundraising or it's partnerships or it's their customers. I have the pleasure of running the Silicon Valley chapter, as well as being part of the HQ team, which I struggle at times to double hat, but it's a very uplifting role that I have because I meet so many founders. We have, I think, 12 or 13 different chapters in the UK. We've all kind of combined on this to help British founders and the British communities to learn a little bit more about what happens in Silicon Valley from all aspects of the ecosystem. So thank you all for joining for this. Just to give you a quick insight on Startup Grind and our values. So as I say, we help founders all over the world, and we aim to give first and help others, make friends, not contacts, and really enhance the community that we all work in. We know that everybody is in and at different stages of the journey, and we just try and help that with the events that we run. We have a big conference every April in Silicon Valley in a place called Redwood City, which is actually a city, but it's not a city that we know back home. It's a small little town. But we run that every year. We bring in about 5,000 attendees to that. Sam, I see you've joined. You can take over in a second. But yeah, we run this big conference. It's for early stage founders, for companies to come from all over the world. They come, they network, they can exhibit, they can pitch, they meet investors. They can soak up the Silicon Valley ecosystem and be inspired to go home or move back over here. So I'll come on to that a little bit more later on. But Sam, I know you just joined. So Sam is our London chapter director. Sam, if you just want to say a few words, and then I can kind of run the session.
Oh, thank you, James. Can you hear me?
Yep, all good.
Okay, fantastic. Hi, everyone. My name is Sam. I lead the chapter here in London. We're super excited to be doing this. This is the first of, like I said, this is the first of many events. And anyone, if you're traveling to London, if you're traveling through the UK, you can always pop in. You can reach out or pop into any of our events. And London Startup Grind chapter is about close to 10 years old, so almost a decade running, the community, supporting founders and getting founders the level of support that they deserve. We want to make this journey, we don't want to make it a lonely journey. Building can be a lonely journey. So what we try to do is to do events every month. We bring the best founders, we bring investors, we bring people that you normally meet on a normal day. We bring them together to our event and, organize it, bringing people together. So if you can move to the next slide, please. Yeah, so I just want to also talk about our community, how large our community is. So the level of support our community gives, we are in more than about 11 active chapters in the UK. So all of this is not just happening in London. It's happening in Isle of Man, it's happening in Brighton, it's happening in Manchester, in Liverpool, in Leeds, in Newcastle, and Scotland, Edinburgh, Aberdeen, Glasgow, and Southampton. So those are all of the cities that also carry the Startup Grind blood or Startup Grind drive and energy, where we host events, bring founders together to talk about what we can all create together. So if you are from any of this city or you have friends in any of this city, please shout out them and let them attend any of our meetups. Thank you very much, James. Over to you.
Okay, right. I'm just going to stop sharing this. Right. So this is going to be a very interactive conversation. I'm going to actually start a Q&A. So for anybody who is in the audience that has any questions for any of the panelists, including myself, We will try our best to answer them and we'll go along. But to kick things off, I'm just going to give you a quick background as to why we're doing this session, right? So I'm British, as you can tell. I moved over to Silicon Valley just over 2 years ago. And yeah, I run the chapter here and I run our sales and partnerships team globally. But I get asked questions all the time from a lot of non-American founders that want to move to Silicon Valley, right? Or they want to move to the US. And I know that Sam gets a lot of questions from his chapter events in London. So we've decided to put this on, right? This could be an educational but a motivational session where we learn about the upside to Silicon Valley and what that brings. And just to give you some insights into my journey so far. So I moved it here 2 years ago. I came over here with no connections in Silicon Valley at all. I'd never used LinkedIn. I now post regularly, and it's very cringeworthy, but it's about brand building and community. I've since then started going to events, and I was like, what is a startup event? So I started going to a few, and then I realized, well, I could actually do this myself. So I then took on the mantle of running our Silicon Valley chapter, which is our biggest one. We have 60,000 members here. And there are 30 different events happening every night in Silicon Valley. So it's very saturated in that sense, but it's an amazing feel that everybody you meet is in tech, they're in venture, or they have a startup, or they're thinking of building a startup. So it's a bubble in that aspect, but it's a very motivational bubble to be in. And if you're in it, it's a great thing to be part of. The three guests that I have today all come from different aspects of that. And I've brought them together because they all add a different value and a different part to the table and what they can help you with today. So we have, just going across my screen, Daniel Glazer, who is a partner at Wilson Sonsini. They're a big global law firm. They, I think, were the initiators of Google during that IPO. And Daniel can give a quick intro to himself if you'd like to go first.
Sure thing. Great. Thanks a lot, James. So my name's Dan Glazer. I head up the U.S. expansion team at the Silicon Valley headquartered law firm Wilson Sonsini. I also head up our London office. So much like James is a Brit in Silicon Valley, I am a New Yorker who is now based in London. And I head up a team of American and English tech lawyers here on the ground in London that works with UK and European tech companies through their US life cycle: launch, scale, raise venture capital, exit through M&A or IPO in the United States. I'm also an advisory board member of GBX, the Bay Area community for British entrepreneurs and investors in San Francisco, Silicon Valley, Bay Area. But more, I guess, at a high level, what we usually do is companies talk to us about one of two overarching questions. We're looking to launch in the US, what do we do next? Or we're looking to raise money from US investors, what do we do next? And then we scale with them from there.
Thanks, Daniel. Thank you. Tom, would you like to give a quick intro to yourself?
Yeah, sure thing. Hey everyone, I'm Tom. I am the co-founder of a company called Block. We basically help product teams predict how their customers are going to behave by building compute using agents that will essentially show you different behaviors that are happening within your product before you actually build it. I moved to San Francisco in January of this year, although I was kind of spending more and more time over here before then as kind of like stints to see whether San Francisco was going to be my new home. We're an early stage company. We launched out of stealth in the summer of this year. We've raised a pre-seed and a seed round. Prior to this, I worked in the defense industry, but I've also built a couple of companies before this as well. So yeah, I guess I'm an entrepreneur for a pretty long time.
Thanks, Tom. And yeah, just to give everyone some background on how Tom and I met, was in a random co-working space. I think he was struggling to get his visa, and I overheard him talking to somebody else. Obviously, heard the British accent, went over and said hello, and then we've been connected since. So just shows the serendipity over here. And Valerie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, amazing. Okay, I'm Valerie from the UK. Been out in San Francisco about 8 years now. I was on the operating side. I did product and at a company in the UK, was in Brazil, was in the US, and then been an investor the last few years. I'm at a fund called NFX, one of San Francisco's largest seed funds, invested in 23 unicorns since 2017. And yeah, that's sort of my experience here. And I think I'm excited to kind of help you all learn about, I suppose, like raising in the US, how you think about expanding into the US. I'm extremely bullish on, I think, just like the market size and opportunity for founders. And folks like Tom, I think also shows a lot of like conviction and ambition and determination and resilience often also to kind of move halfway across the world to go after your dreams. So I think that also is a big factor that makes us as a fund, we really love international founders and love European founders as well. And I think they usually can differentiate themselves and show very unique determination.
Okay, thank you all. Right, let's kick this off and just give some background as to, if you're happy with that, as to why you moved to the US, and Daniel, for you, why you moved to the UK. Valerie, let's start with you. Right, so you work for this big organization that is very active at the early stage. You moved here 8 years ago. Is there a reason why you chose San Francisco? Is there a reason why you're here now still?
Yeah, I mean, I think really, personally, I believe if you want to be in technology, investing, and sort of be part of the innovation and development in the world, like there's no better place to do that than in San Francisco. There's, of course, other ecosystems in the world, and I had plenty of British founders. I have a brother who still lives in the UK, or moved back with DeepMind to go to the UK, so it's a great ecosystem there. But I think it's just so unmatched, the opportunity. I kind of hearken it. A lot of people, I think, in tech are like, oh well, I can just be remote. Like I can do everything on my laptop. Like why do I even need to be somewhere? I kind of describe it, and if you wanted to be the world's best hedge fund manager, you're probably going to move to New York. The reality is that's where you're going to go. If you want to be an amazing movie star, you're probably going to go to LA. Like that's going to go. You're not going to be in some random town in Wales. Like you're just not going to go do that. Even if you have TikTok, whatever, you're probably going to move to LA at some point. And I think that's just a very similar analogy there with like the tech ecosystem, whether you're an investor or an operator, where you just, if anything, I often call it, there's like a negative activation energy in San Francisco to talk about startups or like get help and support for your startup. And I think that that's like really invaluable, especially in the early stages where you kind of want to capitalize on the time as much as you can.
That's great. And Tom, for you, so do you want to just talk us through your journey in terms of, having this idea of a startup? You're in London or you're in the UK. What was the driving force to try and move to the US, and why San Francisco?
Yeah, for sure. So I think there's a couple of things. When I've previously built companies, there always comes a point where you need to raise a certain level of capital that Europe often struggles to do, just being a bit blunt from that perspective. So I kind of always knew that like San Francisco was going to be home, or at least the Silicon Valley was going to be home at some point. I think this company in particular, like most of our customers are based out here, or most of our potential customers are based out here. And I think the kind of like decision was, instead of getting to the point where, we need the money, so we then go over to the US, we just kind of said to ourselves, why don't we just go and build this company in the US from day one? So initially did some back and forth, came for a couple of months at a time to just scope out and see whether this was going to be the right place for us. And very quickly realized that the drive and the ambition of people here is unmatched in comparison to anywhere else in the world that I've ever visited. And that's kind of been one of the driving forces as to what moved us here.
And just to pick up on that, because it's so true, right? You always get the bug when you come here and you are inspired by other people. And as I say, everybody you meet is working in venture or as a startup. So you can't help but think, oh, I need to be part of this ecosystem. I guess on that point, coming over here, like what was it exactly that drove you to think I need to move here? Is it going to events? Is it just being around people that are in this ecosystem, this bubble here? Or was there something else that drove you to think I need to be here?
I think more than anything, it was the people. So like every conversation you have here is, I've been to other cities, I've been back to the UK. I think the conversations I have with people are often they are just very different here in comparison to the UK. Like you can walk into a Blue Bottle coffee here in San Francisco, and I can almost guarantee there's going to be someone talking about small language models or something to do with the kind of cutting edge of technology, which like, if I walked into Starbucks in London and started talking about small language models, like, yes, if I was stood by DeepMind, there would probably be people that, kind of understood and were on board. But you just don't get it as much. So it's kind of like that intensity of people that are all on the same journey is what makes this city so special, in my opinion. And I think the other side of it is because this city is so small and has such a high concentration of people that are focused on building very specific solutions. Yes, there are the downsides, but the upside is everyone wants to help one another. So I think for me, like, that's been the driving force as to, it's what made me choose this city over, Austin, New York, Seattle, or any of the other European cities that we were considering.
Yeah, just to touch on that as well, it's so true. I had a career in banking and finance before I moved out here, so very different to the startup world. And that is very cutthroat, right? And it's very competitive. I moved out here, and literally anybody you meet, they are actually interested in what you're doing. And the first question is like, what are you working on? And how can I help you? Rather than, oh, you're doing that, good luck. I think that, I don't know whether that is a British or European mindset, or it's like a Silicon Valley mindset as well, but I think we'll come on to that a bit more. Daniel, what about you? You've gone the opposite way, right? What about a bit of background about you? Were you operating in Silicon Valley and then saw a gap and wanted to help Brits? I know you have some Scottish heritage, so yeah, talk us through your kind of move back.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been a tech lawyer from the late 1900s, Silicon Alley scene originally, in New York, and I took a meeting in 2011 with the British Consul General in New York, and they said, listen, we've launched this Tech City initiative here in East London, to scale the digital economy throughout the UK. And he said, historically, we had seen American tech companies come to the UK, but if this Tech City initiative takes off, we expect we're going to see a lot more UK tech companies look to access the US commercial markets and the US capital markets. How do we help that generation of companies? And if you could do it on the ground in London, that would be brilliant. So that was, the gap in the market is that what if we put a blended American-British team on the ground in London to be that bridge between the companies that want to access the US commercial and capital markets, help them do that, but also be able to do that in a way that we're sort of speaking their language. As I often make the kind of dad joke, a lot of Americans can't even spell SEIS. But being able to talk about both sides of the Atlantic simultaneously in the UK market, we found to be powerful.
And just to pick up on kind of who you deal with and not deal with, sorry, who you work with, like, is there a difference for the ones that succeed when they move over here to the ones that struggle?
Yeah,
I'm trying to get a picture of the types of founders that you work with that really have a drive to come over here, and the ones that end up doing pretty well and staying versus the ones that may be struggling and are moving home.
The most successful companies we find coming out of the UK, go into the United States, are the ones that go early or go late. And by go early, what I mean is pretty early on in the company's journey. The CEO or the founder said, actually, we need to optimize the company and the product offering for the US market to start, right? And so they will typically move that team over to the United States, very commonly to the Bay Area. They'll often keep so-called back office functions in the UK, like tech or development, et cetera. But they're going out and optimizing from day one for the US market, and they're raising money from early stage US investors to support that. And they scale as a US facing transatlantic business from very early on in their life cycle. That's go early. The go late model is when the company initially optimizes for the UK market, right? And it builds the foundation in the UK. It gets product market fit in the UK, raises a round or two, maybe three even from the UK, that eventually gets pulled into the US by customer traction or user growth. And then they decide to Americanize something that they originally built for the UK market. And then the question we often get is, well, at that stage, does the founder CEO, do they need to move to the United States? And our view on that, having worked with a lot of companies over the years, is the following. If at that point, or at any point in the company's life cycle, it believes that the success or failure of the business, the ultimate success or failure, rides on potentially becoming the market winner or the market leader in the US, then you've got to put someone like the founder CEO on the ground in the US, because you cannot win an away match by leaving your best players back at home, especially because the rules of the game are going to be more different than you think.
I love the analogy. Great stuff. I think that brings us on quite nicely to what everyone probably wants to hear about, and that's fundraising. Valerie, so NFX actively invest in obviously non-American companies as well as the US. Is there a difference in how you see? Let's keep it on British founders that are either based over here or they come over here and pitch to you. Is there an underlying difference, or is there a delivery difference in what they do compared to your kind of standard Silicon Valley founders?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll say on both sides. I think it's a cliche, but fortunately, a lot of cliches are often very true in the reality, where I would say the outward communicated ambition for where the company is going, which may internally they have the same ambition, is usually a tenth of what someone else will say. You'll be like, where do you think you see in a couple of years? And okay, we'll get to, maybe 1 million ARR, like end of, by Q1 2027, 2 million or something. And I'll meet the same company. And most of the time there are 10 of the other similar companies that I meet. And the other ones that are American will say 10 million. I know at some point it's like, maybe they're also just saying it crazy. And like, how much do I believe that? And it's hard because I think, thankfully, for us, I am British age, you have that lens. I understand they're going to be probably more muted of that outward ambition. However, it's hard, when you have 95%, 90% of your founders or people you're seeing in this industry have this much more outward ambition, and then you're comparing this person against that. It's really hard to then back them to like, wait, are they really going to go all the way? Are they really trying to get a $3 billion exit? Again, remember in venture capital, and I think it does depend on the size of the fund and entry. Like us as a large seed fund, like we are looking for exits that's $2 billion plus. Like that is what we underwrite to. And so even if it's amazing, and there's also so many ways to run a business, and so many ways you personally can make money and all of these things. So like, yes, amazing for you personally to go and run a business and sell it for $300 million. Incredible. Us as an investment firm, that's bad. Like we actually don't want that and would be upset with that outcome, because we're like, why did you sell so soon? Or why were you not on an outcome that was $3 billion? And I know that sounds crazy, but I also see that sometimes with UK founders are like, oh yeah, where do I see? I think really there's a lot of like $300 to $500 million like acquisitions here. Like that's going to be really great, and we're just going to be like, that is great. That's not a fit for the type of funding that venture capital is. So it is cheesy. I do though very much believe that in the kind of like, maybe I've become very Californian in the like manifesting of the future, that ultimately, if you at least aim to be a $10 billion company, you could be a $2 billion company. If you aim to be a $200 million company, there's no way you're going to be a $2 billion company. That's just not going to happen. And so I think that is some part, like I really encourage founders, and I think that is like inner work we have to do of like truly believing it in yourself, like truly embodying and believing it. And the reality is, if you don't believe that, whether that's the idea or the team that you have or about yourself, again, no shame. Building a startup is not the only way to have joy and feeling in life and like feel fulfilled. But if you want to go down the especially US venture capital route, you need to be thinking about being a billionaire. And that's like the only thing that's going to happen for you. And that is extreme, but that's also why it is an extreme thing to be a founder,
Yeah, I think just to pick up on that, it's great advice, because it's about pitching a vision, but also an exit that's worthwhile. And not raising a load of money and being a $1 billion company isn't for everybody, and you kind of have to accept that and run with that. But if you are looking to be, a big company, you have to aim big, right? And I think us as Brits, we are kind of risk averse in that sense, right? We are we play ourselves down, we do big. Whereas here, as you say, they add an extra zero on just for the sake of it, almost to be the next one that's going to change the world. So I love that aspect of just thinking big picture. Tom, what about you, right? So you had this idea, you launched your startup. You don't have to divulge how much you've raised, but you have raised in the US recently. Was there a point at which you just hit a brick wall in the UK, or was it, you didn't even try to raise money in the UK? You always wanted to raise here. What was your process for that?
Yeah, so we spoke to a few people in the UK. honestly, I think at the time people kind of said to us like, what you're building sounds kind of crazy. And it was back before like operator existed as a function, like compute use was still in its very, very early days. And I remember having a conversation with some of the angels that we'd onboarded for our pre-seed round who were based over here in San Francisco. And they kind of said like, to put it bluntly, and it is what it is. The exact words were, why are you wasting your time in Europe? Get over to San Francisco and come and raise here. And we hopped on a plane and flew out to San Francisco and spent a couple of months here. And, a couple of months later, we'd raised double the amount that we were initially trying to raise at double the valuation that we were trying to raise it at.
So I think that alludes to Alexander's question here in the comments, in the Q&A. So was it a case of, just getting on a plane to SF and trying to meet as many investors as possible? Or did you, I'll come on to my second question actually, because I have some ideas about this as well. But what was the process there of moving over here and trying to meet as many investors?
So I think like one of the things I see a lot is founders will I'm going to go to the US for 2 weeks to raise money. And like, it's a really bad move. Like whenever I hear a founder doing that, I'm kind of like, guys, you need to be here for a lot longer than 2 weeks if you're going to raise. You're coming to a city where you have no network and no one's going to open their books to you unless like they think you're here to stay. Now there are exceptions to that, but like, I think large and behold, like when a founder asks me to help them raise money, like if they're not serious about being in San Francisco, I'm just not going to be serious about helping them, because like at the end of the day, like I'm opening up my network. I want them to succeed as founders, but I don't want them to come and suck air out of the room and then go back to London and say like, oh, just go to San Francisco for 2 weeks and you raise money. So the way that we did it, like I came over here with a small network. I had a few friends that were here and I kind of said to myself, what's the quickest way that I can build a network? I tried going to some of the events, like frankly, they were kind of low quality. I didn't meet the best people. I certainly didn't meet any investors by going to the events. So from that perspective, it didn't work out. So what I started doing was hosting dinners at my house. And I just basically had initially 10 friends around for dinner. I cooked a meal and just said, look, come around, like, let's have a chat. Like, let's just catch up. Like, let's have a good conversation. Like, that's the thing that I was doing in London. And I enjoyed being around founders that were building. And the next time I did it, I said, bring a friend this time. And then quickly over the space of kind of like 2.5 months, we were doing events probably every 2 to 3 weeks. And by the end of that period, like I then had a strong enough network of founders that I could then use to say, hey, look, we're going to raise some money. We've got a few angels on board that are excited about what we're doing. Who can you introduce us to? And that's when it all snowballed very quickly.
I mean, it's a great initiative, and it just shows the kind of entrepreneurial side of using these smaller events, but your connections to open doors, right? And I think that's a great process to run by. Daniel, what about you? I'm guessing a lot of the clients that you work with all want to come here to raise money or to build their customers. How do you see that, and how do you advise on when they move here or they're looking to move here, how they tackle the fundraising?
Yeah, I think in terms of moving for commercial reasons, I think that's kind of my answer before, which is that they either decide to go after it pretty early or they go after it late. But the fundraising dynamic is different. And I think in my experience, what a lot of companies based in the UK don't realize is how prevalent it is in the US, especially in the Bay Area, for former startup operators to become VCs, right? Or the fund or the firm as a whole, right, is really interested in leveraging its network and its expertise, right, to help guide the growth of the business, right? They know how to build American businesses. They don't really know how to build local British or other European businesses. And so in our experience, if you're looking to raise a US-led early stage round, let's say a US-led seed or even Series A, you usually need to tick one of 4 boxes. And this is how we advise companies on this, which is first and foremost, is the CEO based in the United States, CEO based in the Bay Area. We'll talk about it in terms of the Bay Area, right? If you've got the CEO based in the Bay Area, right, then you are essentially a homegrown American business, and you are investable, assuming that the business is itself investable, because then they can leverage their expertise and network to work together with the decision maker to scale the business in the US. If you don't have the CEO based in the Bay Area, then the next box you might tick is, do you have substantial traction in the United States? Ideally product market fit, right? But otherwise substantial user growth, customer traction. In other words, have you built a sufficiently substantial business remotely that there is something there for the Bay Area VC to work with to scale an American business, right? And probably will lead to moving to the US after that. All right, if you don't have that, then the third box you might tick is, do you have experience previously successfully scaling a US business or successfully raising capital from US VCs? In other words, for better or for worse, pattern matching. If you've done it before in the US successfully, you're seen as being more likely to be able to do it again. And so those first three, US presence, US traction, US experience, I refer to those as a US story. Do you have a US story? If you do not have a US story, then the fourth box that you might tick is, are you materially better than US alternatives? And the thinking behind that is, if you're let's say a UK-based company looking to raise a US-led seed, and you have no US story, you are basically the riskiest bet at the casino, right? Why? Because not only do you present the standard seed risk that all the other American companies do, but you add another dimension of risk to the table, which is geography risk. Because remember, they don't know how to build early stage British businesses, right? Now, US VCs are fine taking risk, obviously, but they want to see upside for the risk. So if you're just as good as the American alternatives, that's probably not good enough because they don't present the geography risk that the UK company does. So you've got to be that much better. It's a surmountable barrier, but it's a substantial barrier that you've got to be that much better if you've got no US story and you want the early stage US VC to place the bet on you and pass up the opportunity cost or spend the opportunity cost of not investing in the American company, right? And the way that we frame it that way is because we want companies to realize, look, every day that you spend building a startup is a race against time, right? Are you going to run out of runway before you build a sustainable business? And if you spend too much time trying to jam the square peg of US investment into the round hole of the company, that's not a great use of time. So you got to make sure that the US is the right place to raise from and that you are, as a business, are best positioned for that.
Yeah, it's good advice. And there's a question here, Daniel, for you. So would you advise UK startups to move to the US if they've already raised in the UK? I mean, I guess this is a question around scalability and how big you want to go, right?
Yeah, I mean, it actually, for the most part, tends to be an operational question, which is like, let's say that you raised your seed round from the UK. Okay, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to first build a UK business and then Americanize it? Or are you looking around saying, okay, I've got some money, but it now occurs to me a year, 2 years, whatever in, that what I really need to do is attack the United States. And the UK is maybe nice and all, but ultimately I need to attack the US market. If you come to that realization, yeah, you should move. And I have a lot of those conversations with early stage founders in the UK, and it's stressful, right? I mean, you started to build the business, you look around, you say, actually, look at my American competitors, they're raising more money. They're in this environment that, as you both all three of you have described, is totally conducive to scaling tech companies. But let's say I've got a family, right? Like I don't want to leave, and it's a hard choice to make. But ultimately, when the rubber hits the road, the reality of it is that if you don't do it, there are competitors who will do it. So you got to make the hard choice. How important is it to go to the US and try to scale there?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great point. Just my 2 cents on fundraising and what I see here, and what kind of frustrates me, is the effort that some founders don't put in when it comes to fundraising. So there's a couple of questions on here. Should I come to SF and just try and meet people? Tom's alluded to the fact that if you just come over here for 2 weeks and try and meet investors, it's pretty hard. They need to see some commitment. What the next layer of that is, like, who are you actually coming here to try and speak to, right? I run these events in Silicon Valley, and we have, 100 people that come to them. And, I don't know 100 people that are going to be there, but I invariably get asked when people check in at registration, hey, James, can you introduce me to an investor here? And it really frustrates me because it's like, well, who, which investor, and why? Who are you? Like, what have you done before this conversation to say that I want to meet this particular person? So what I then say to that is, okay, if you're coming over here, or even if you're fundraising in the UK or fundraising here, is to have a hit list, right? Have a North Star VC or investor list And that's you could start with 100, right? 100 investors that you want to speak to because they are relevant to your business, and you want them on your board. You want them part of your business, and therefore you want to meet them for the right reasons, right?
I've just shared in the chat. Actually, we built a tool at NFX. Genuinely, it was because all of our team of founders and operators that we saw this problem ourselves. So we have this tool, signal.nfx.com. Really, actually basically has mapped all investors, pretty much all investors in the US, and you can actually see like what area they focus on, actually what their check sizes are, what is their sweet spot, do they lead, do they not lead. 100% use this tool to identify the investors that are going to be right for you, the fund, they're going to line up with kind of the ethos or maybe background that they have. So I highly encourage people to use that. And I think to that end as well, like I do, lead on networks, but honestly also cold outreach. That's totally like part of it's a sales job. Someone wrote some here, sorry, I'm kind of putting in. Someone wrote a question here. Should I use an advisor? Never use an advisor to raise money. It's an immediate bad sign. Immediately bad sign. I don't care how good your business is. When I get something from some sort of advisory company that I'm helping them raise, especially early stage, I'm like, what the hell is wrong? Your role as a CEO of a business, like, is fundraising. Like that is part of your job to do. And if you cannot do that fundraising, like you can't do that job, candidly. And so that's really part of it. And also including if you have a co-founder who's technical CTO, they also should be joining calls as well. The CEO will usually lead it, but the other people would usually join the second, third, the IC meeting. So they also need to be prepared to do that. So never do advisor, but it's totally fine to send cold outreach. If you have a compelling vision, if you're able to communicate, you have good growth, why? Like for personally at NFX, we look at every email that comes to us. Every company that comes into us, we will at least review and get back to you if it's applicable. And there's many deals we have done that have come from cold outreach. We don't view that as like a negative signal. And there's a lot of fun to do that as well. So I just encourage like, that's part of the hustle and grind, I think, of doing the fun of creating a startup is like figuring out how to fundraise and get in front of people. And often that is also a good sign because that's similar in the sales process of like getting customers or getting people on board. Like you're going to hustle, you're going to get in front of people, you're going to do what it takes. And so that's also why it's really important for the founders to be doing the fundraising themselves. Because otherwise they're like, what are you doing? So just please never use a fundraiser. They're gonna those entities, advisor entities are gonna say it's so good, you don't have to take your time. I promise you, I'm always like, what is wrong with this business that they are using an advisor company? Is the first question.
I think there's a couple of questions here all around kind of scalability in the US, right? And I think we've kind of touched on some of these points, but I think this whole session isn't for everybody on the call to move to the US. This is just to give people the insights into like how a different market works. And Silicon Valley is, the heart of innovation and venture. And there's a lot of money moving around here. It's crazy. So this is more just an eye-opening session to think about if you're looking to scale. And this is what I think. You're looking to scale, or you are looking to fundraise, or you're young with no kids and you have no commitments and you want to try something out. Like come over here for a couple of years maybe and see if it works, right? If it doesn't, then fine. I've been here for 2 years. I don't know how long I'm going to be here for, going forward, but I'm not a startup founder, but I meet a lot that just come over here for a couple of weeks. They get the buzz of it all. They move over here for a couple of years, the whole visa process. I'm happy to educate people on that and talk through what I went through and the ups and downs of that process. And I'll share my kind of calendar link and people can book in 15 minutes. I'm happy to help anybody that I can. Just to wrap things up, because I know I've got a lot of questions still. Maybe we do a second one for this, but just kind of closing points from each of you as to, what advice would you give people on the call who are questioning whether they should move over here, they should visit over here. Maybe they've never thought about moving over here and they just joined this for a bit of education. Do you have any parting wisdom that can help any of the founders on the call? Daniel, do you want to go first?
Happy to start. Look, our overarching bit of advice is go with intentionality, right? It's like I talk to a lot of companies like I want to go to the US, I want to raise US money. Why? Because it's the US, right? It's the bright shiny ball. I get it, right? But the most successful companies are the ones that decide, okay, here is why I want to go to the US. Here is, I am at point A. Here is point B that I'm going to try to get to, right? And there are clear pathways at this point, to get to US expansion, US fundraising, US success. But you got to decide what it is that you're actually trying to do. Are you, for example, are you a SaaS company that just wants to make the US one revenue source of many revenue sources? But at the end of the day, you see yourself as a global UK-based SaaS company. That's cool, right? Your approach to the US is going to look very different from someone who says, okay, I'm a deep tech founder. I need a certain type of venture, a certain type of talent that is only available in the Bay Area. I need to go and get that. Okay, well, that means you probably need to leave and go, right? But you got to, at the beginning, take some time to figure out what is it that you're actually trying to achieve. And I just want to say something really quickly, because I didn't want to jump in earlier. I just want to double click on something that Valerie said, because it is so true. And it's something that I often see missed on this side of the Atlantic, which is, Valerie, if I can put words in your mouth or recharacterize what you said, it sounded like what you're saying is that an exit that might be seen in some circles as a good exit may be seen as a failure, actually, if it's too small. And what too small is maybe a little bit different in the Bay Area than it is in London. And that's something that we see companies here miss all the time, that they are surprised to find out how big the exit really needs to be in order to be deemed to be a success with Bay Area VCs. And it's such an important point. Make sure that you are aligned with your VCs as to what success looks like. And I'm finding not enough companies ask that question. And it's crucial, because if you find out later on that what you think is a good exit is not what your investors and board members think is a good exit, you don't want that kind of misalignment as you're scaling.
Good advice. Tom, some parting wisdom from you, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think it kind of like echoes what Dan was saying. Like the way that I put it is, raising in San Francisco is both fundamentally easier and fundamentally harder. At the end of the day, the best people supposedly the best founders in the world are coming out here to raise money. And I don't mean that in any particular way. It's just because of that, because of the number of people that there are here, you're competing against a higher level of competition than you would be in other places around the world. So I think to echo the point, frankly, it's is your business the right business to be raising capital from the US if that's what you're coming here to do? And are you prepared to put the next 5 to 7 years of your life probably living in San Francisco? Is that the thing that you're prepared to do? I think you're giving up a lot by coming out here, and it's about making sure that you do have that level of understanding and as Dan says, intentionality to be able to say, this is the right place for me, this is where I want to build my business, and this is why it's going to be successful.
Great, thank you. And Valerie, just finally from you, any advice for founders coming out here? How do they get in front of yourself or the right people? Any final tips on how they should change their mindset or attitude?
Something I would say, it's ultimately, it's a really exciting time. If you're here on this call thinking about doing a company, it's so exciting. And what a privilege that is to being able to choose to do that kind of with your career and with your life. So, I think we're saying a lot of these things, how it's hard and difficult, but really ultimately, a lot of it, I think honestly is being bloody-minded about what you want to go and achieve and do. And I just think the world really is your oyster. I think the environment in Silicon Valley is very, while it can be cheesy, is very positively affirming to that. That can be a bubble that can be hard in its own ways because you get sucked into that. But it's really, anything really is possible. And I think that's true no matter where you're in the world. And I think whether that's even just experience out here for a few weeks, as a trip, as a business trip, meeting some people, whether that is moving out here full time. I think taking that, I actually think of founders who can embody that spirit in London, that's just harder to do, super, super successful. The super great companies that come out actually have that same sort of embodied spirit as out here. And so I think it's learning from people, being willing to learn, being open to the opportunity, believing in yourself, and then truly understanding what it is that your goals are. And that, firstly, it's totally fine to figure out that you're I don't want to be a startup founder. There's nothing wrong with that. If anything, that's you have to be legitimately, you're probably crazy to be a startup founder, because most likely you're going to make far less money, it's going to be much harder, and you're going to be so much more exhausted than anything else that you can do. But if you want to go down the path, really the world is your oyster, use connections, reach out to people, hustle. Every path, no matter what you see online, is hard. I work with a lot of companies and the path is never linear, no matter what it will look like on the outside. So also just remember that. I think that can help you around the debate, because you meet people where it's like, oh yeah, I had a horrible month, but I just raised a Series B at some crazy value, you know, whatever that is. So just remembering that no journey is linear. There's always super tough times. And like part of honestly that what distinguishes great founders from like generational founders versus sort of founders people don't remember is that resilience and determination. And I think thankfully British people, I actually think, have that in spades. Fully, just like culturally part of our core, much more than I think the standard American does. So embody that resilience, and then hopefully also try and embody the American optimism, because I think those two things together are a real killer.
Yeah, and final just word from me. Yeah, I mean, it's called Startup Grind for a reason. It is a grind. It's so hard. You have to be 24/7 on this and give it your all. So thank you all for joining. As I mentioned at the top of the call, this was meant to be an interactive. We answered some of the questions. There was some more chat, question on the chat there as well. We might set up a second one in the new year. But for anybody who is inspired by any of the conversations today and would like to come out here, there was a couple of questions about, you know, when you come out here, what do you do? Startup Grind, I run a ton of events. Airplanes taking off in the background. And we have our big conference in Redwood City, which is in the heart of Silicon Valley. Another question there is, what's the difference between Silicon Valley and SF? SF is the top where the city is. Silicon Valley is the belt all the way down to San Jose. So there are pockets of innovation, founders, investors all over the place. So wherever you land, I'm sure you will bump into somebody, but I'm happy to give you a tour of the area and tell you where to go and where you need to be. But yeah, we run a ton of events here, so reach out if you need to. Our conference at the end of April, so if you're looking to just attend and meet investors and meet co-founders, meet partners, meet customers, then please do so. We have an exhibition program. If you want to apply for that, I can try and help you with that. That gets you an exhibition spot. You get to pitch on stage. You get to actually meet one-on-one with investors in a dedicated investor lounge, and you soak up the whole of Silicon Valley in a couple of days. So if you are planning to come out here, you don't need a visa for that. I saw a couple of questions on that. It's not that easy to get a visa. I agree. I went through that process. So has Tom. I guess, Valerie, you did at some point. But yeah, reach out if you need any help with that side of things. Again, thank you all for joining. Thank you, Daniel, Valerie, Tom. Have a good rest of the day, and we'll see you all soon.